So I'm Noelle D'Amico from the Workers' Circle, a Jewish social justice organization that has been fighting for a better democracy and human rights for all of us for almost 125 years now. And we are so proud to be a partner with the Center for Common Ground. Like so many of you on this call, all of our members, postcard and phone bank, and we know that right now those efforts are more important than ever. You know, this past week, we've been sort of taking in the enormity of what attacks on our democracy have produced. It is a scary time. It is an uncertain time. It is a chaotic time. People are feeling all kinds of feelings. Some people are really angry. Some people are just, I can't take anymore. Turn it off. I have to get away from it. Other people are afraid and beginning to get into that crouched defensive position. Please make it stop. Tonight, you've chosen to be here because you believe in our democracy. And what I can promise you is every time we gather together as a community and we take action that is strategic together and we remind one another of our values, we take steps that are going to produce the democracy future we all need and deserve. And that is a truly multiracial democracy that ensures that every single one of us can cast our vote freely and fairly. You know, in these times, it is easy to just say, all right, what do I have to do to get by? But there is a wonderful scholar from Yale named Timothy Snyder. He's an historian and he studies fascism and authoritarian regimes. He has done in-depth study on how these regimes take over democracies. And in his wonderful brief book on tyranny, he has this commandment for us. For those times when democracies are backsliding and we're seeing challenges to rule of law, and we are overcome with the amounts of attack and fear-based rhetoric coming our way, he says, do not obey in advance. It is critical. Do not obey in advance. That means if you're afraid, find a neighbor, find a community. This is a community right here, and we'll start acting and supporting one another together. But don't try to hide. Don't comply, and keep your voice strong. Together, we are going to get to the America that we need. So with all of these things that have happened, you know, we've got a third branch of the courts, right? They've pretty much gone rogue at this point. We've got unprecedented interpretations that are actually unreasonable, unprecedented and unreasonable with that immunity decision. The president essentially now has the role of a king post-immunity decision. And that means that our influence on Congress is the best way for we, the people, to make our voices heard. A lot of people say to me, Noelle, well, you know, I don't know that we have majority support for any of these bills in Congress right now. What about that filibuster? Well, we're going to get to all that tonight. Don't worry about it. We're going to go through the process. We're going to go through the hurdles. But this is what I want to say to you. We have got to keep that pressure on. We cannot let up for 1 minute. We are going to go and insist upon the voting rights and democracy reform we need. I'm going to pass it on to Andrea, who's going to take us through our legislative review. We've been to a lot of places in the last 7 months. Andrea, recap it for us.
Oh, thank you so very much, Noelle. So what we've been working on these past few months have been our voting rights bills. I'm going to give you a quick glance in the future. in the future, in addition to voting rights, we are also going to be working on getting the courts under control. But tonight, let's look at where we've been. Let's celebrate the victories that we've had, and then let's get ready to go back into the fight and to, they refer to Congress as the Hill, and let's get ready to go back and take another hill. All right, what have we done? We have worked on the Freedom to Vote Act, Bill S1 and HR 11. We've got 51, all the Democrats and the independent in the Senate, and we have 215 co-sponsors in the House. Now, normally we're looking at 215 people to be able to pass a bill in the House. I'll be talking about why this technically has not passed the House, even though it's got 215 co-sponsors. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, we're going to be doing a meeting simulation on that one, so stay tuned. S4, that's Dick Durbin's bill. He's got 49 co-sponsors, so obviously he's missing 2 people. And HR 14 in the House, Terry Sewell, has got 217 people on that bill. And again, we're going to talk about why that hasn't passed. DC Admissions Act, otherwise known as DC Statehood. S51, DC would be the 51st state in the union. That's Tom Harper's bill. We've got 46 co-sponsors. In the House, HR 51, Eleanor Holmes Norton, we've got 208. And then the Inclusive Democracy Act, which is a restoration of rights bill, S3423. That is one of the newer bills and only has 5 co-sponsors. And HR 6643, Ayanna Pressley, with 23 only Dem co-sponsors. So I'm just very, very quickly going to recap what these bills do. The Freedom to Vote Act basically says that everybody will have the, whoops, this is the wrong one. The Freedom to Vote Act basically says we will have the ability to vote. It impacts, see, people weren't watching me on these slides. All right, I possibly have it somewhere else. I'll go back to that one. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. This bill reestablishes the rules for pre-clearance. This is part of what we lost when the courts decided, nope, the formula that people have been using to figure out what states or counties have to get pre-clearance before they change voting laws. That's old, and we need a new one. Well, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act would basically be the reauthorization of the 1965 Civil Rights Act, which never had a problem being reauthorized before Mr. Trump took office. All right, DC Admissions Act. There are 2 states where the city of Washington, D.C. currently has more residents, and yet it is a city, it is not a state. The notion of city-states is not a foreign one. Paris is a city-state. London is a city-state. This has occurred in many different countries, but the capital of DC and now years ago, because so much of the population of Washington, D.C. was Black, for many, many years, people believe and still do. This is why DC has never been able to achieve statehood. So we are working to right that wrong, because when the DC City Council votes on a budget, Congress has to say that's okay. Any major laws they want to change, their gun laws, Congress has to say it's okay that you do that. It wasn't that long ago that they couldn't even really vote for president, but now they can. But they need 2 voting senators, and even though they have a representative in Eleanor Holmes Norton, she doesn't have a vote.
I think, Andrea, that what strikes me about that is every time I hear more than 700,000 people, most of whom are Black and brown, are not represented in the heart of our nation's capital. It is so beyond overdue. It's insulting to even use the word overdue. But I just wanted to say thank you for going through that. You know, a lot of times DC gets short shrift, and for a long time, oh, that'll never pass was the attitude. When I worked on the Hill 25 years ago, forget it. Oh, that'll never pass. That's a long shot. But because of advocates like all of you here today, that prospect is getting closer and closer, and we're not going to give 1 inch until every single person in our nation and every single person in DC can cast their ballot. Sorry, Andrea, I just got moved
Oh
around.
no, I am
It
loving that. I
important.
am enjoying
Yeah.
that, and I'm going,
Yeah.
yes, that is so true. Yes, yes, yes. Loving it, loving it, loving it. Yes. All right. Now, the Inclusive Democracy Act, as I said, is one of our newer bills. And this bill will get rid of the issue that we had in at least 3 states. Kentucky, Virginia, and Iowa are still lifetime felony disenfranchisement states. So if you commit a felony in those states, even if they never send you to prison, you lose the right to vote for a lifetime until your rights are restored by the governor or whomever the state says has to restore your rights. That felony disenfranchisement impacts 700,000 people in the United States. And so this bill says, look, people don't get younger, and they don't lose their citizenship when they have a felony. So we think it's very, very important that the right of citizens of the United States to vote in an election for federal office shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of a felony offense. And then even during confinement, prisoners will be registered to vote and can cast their ballot. And then they're going to go back and let people who are out of prison know, hello, you actually now have the right to register to vote and to vote. So, as I said, one of our newer bills and a very expansive bill. And let me go back to the Freedom to Vote Act. The Freedom to Vote Act, even though I don't have the screen up, the Freedom to Vote Act actually codified into law a lot of changes that people had been making in very progressive states around election law. And the whole idea was, let's make voting easier for everybody. Let's have 2 weeks of early voting in all 50 states, or at least 2 weeks of early voting. Let's have vote by mail. Everybody in every state, they need to be able to vote by mail. If they're older and they don't have transportation, we're going to make voting easier. We're going to get rid of photo ID. Everybody doesn't have one. We can't claim to be a democracy if we put up all these, quote, rules that are just designed to literally stop certain people from voting. Gerrymandering, we've got to fix this. We are not going to take people of one race, pack them all into one district and go, hey, all right, you folks get to have one representative. They're like, wait a minute, I live 30 miles from that person. And, you're making a squiggly line in order to form the district. They're like, nope, we're not doing that anymore. So that's the whole concept behind freedom to vote. Now, you notice some of the bills have more than 200 co-sponsors in the House. And you're going, okay. We remember some of those bills passed in the House in a previous Congress, and they went to the Senate and something happened. Well, what happened in the Senate was the filibuster. So the filibuster allows a very small minority of people to say, you know what, I am going to block this bill, and I am not going to let people vote on it or do anything else. And so, in order to overcome the filibuster, this delaying tactic, this debating for hours, this literally running out the clock for consideration of a bill, the filibuster, it is something, it's a rule that they came up with in the Senate. They made it up. Somebody thought, oh, this will be a clever way to let people in the minority stop a majority of people from moving forward on something that we really don't like.
And of course, it has a really long and frankly racist history as well. It stopped the passage of anti-lynching laws. It slowed the passage of civil rights acts. It has stopped so many things. And for those of you who are followers or fans of Ari Berman, he devotes a big part of his new book, Minority Rule, to how that filibuster rule has functioned to entrench minority power. Dr. King actually called for the elimination of the filibuster in 1957. And because the Worker Circle's so old, we were around back then. And we said immediately, we're going to fight for this. It is a long fight, but that is one of the most important rules. And all of us have to bind together to get that rule changed. One of the great successes of our advocacy in 2021 and 2022, the beginning of 2022, even though the Freedom to Vote John R. Lewis Act failed on the filibuster, essentially, 2 people did not vote to lay the filibuster aside to pass voting rights, and those were Senators Manchin and Sinema. Thank you very much. What we did was change the mind of so many senators about this rule that the vast majority were actually prepared to begin to consider this, and they lay it aside for all kinds of other pieces of legislation. Debt ceiling, so it's possible. I want to tell you, don't get worried about the filibuster. Get mad about the filibuster, because we're gonna break through that. Go ahead, Andrea.
Oh, thank you. Yes, and I love that part. When it suits them, can we just like ignore the filibuster and lay it on the table? We all agree now, filibuster. Okay, so now we're just gonna go on. It's like, what? You can decide to ignore the rule whenever you want. Yeah, it's a made up rule.
Yeah.
Anyway, cloture. Cloture means 60 senators agree that they will hear a bill. Now, when they are hearing the bill, they can put a time limit on it and say, we have got to get this done within a certain time. When Harry Reid was the Senate Majority Leader, I don't know if you remember this, President Obama's first term, there were 62 Democratic senators that were in DC. And Harry Reid would not budge on voting to eliminate the filibuster. And so that was one of our best chances of getting rid of it because we had such a big majority in the Senate, and he let it pass by. So we're still fighting over cloture and the filibuster. Now, caucuses, this will be a moment. When you think of Congress, think of it as being organized into clubs, as it were. These are the caucuses that we normally, or I worked with when we were people demanding action. The Progressive Caucus, which is the biggest caucus in the House, it has 100 House members and one Senate member. Bernie Sanders is the only senator that's a member of the Progressive Caucus. There's the Black Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, and the Asian American Pacific Islander Caucus. And so one of the things that I would do when I was organizing lobbying is I would identify members of the caucuses, these four, the Quad Caucus, that I thought would be most interested in the bill. And then I would begin with Quad Caucus members and work my way out through there. Now, I mentioned earlier, we have several bills that have 208, 215, 217 co-sponsors. And you're like, and why haven't they passed the House? Well, in order to pass a bill, normally when you introduce a bill, it gets assigned to a committee. Now, once the bill is introduced and assigned to a committee, there are basically three ways that bill can go to the floor. Way number one. Way number one says that the committee that has been assigned the bill, committee of jurisdiction, they set up a hearing, they hear about the bill, support, opposition, and then they vote. If they vote to advance the bill either A goes to another committee or B might go straight to the floor for the entire House to vote on it, at which point then it would go to the Senate. Another path to the floor would be for the Speaker of the House to take the bill and say, I want this bill to go directly to the floor. And the third path, not used very often, but we may see it again, a discharge petition where they literally have all the members that are co-sponsors of the bill sign a discharge petition saying, we want this bill to go to the floor and we will vote for this bill on the floor. Now, in order to mount a successful discharge petition, you need generally 218 votes, which we just don't have. So that's why a bill has 217 co-sponsors and has not been able to pass this current House. So elections have consequences. On other committees, you're going to get this, so you can look up all the committees. These are committees that are new. Committee on Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party has been created. You know who created that. And then you know who got rid of the select committees on climate crisis, economic disparity, and fairness in growth, and the select committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. I wonder which group would get rid of those committees. All right, now.
Before we go
What-
on, Andrea, if I could jump in for just one
Yes.
moment, because you've provided just a wealth of information here. And I just want to pause because I know when I'm receiving that much information, sometimes I'm like, wait, where was I in this? What we did in the first part was very rapidly review all the legislation that we've discussed in our monthly meetings over the last 7 months. Then we went to those procedural hurdles that a bill needs to get through in order to get to the floor and get a vote. So we had the filibuster and cloture hurdles, right, to navigate through to the Senate. We have the caucuses as a way to garner support for your bill. Figure out those caucuses. Who can you bring on to support? You had then, Andrea, discussed 3 ways for a bill to move out of committee. You have those 3 ways, which is it gets voted out of committee and onto the floor. The Speaker of the House takes it onto the floor, or a discharge petition, then allows it to move to the floor. So where we are now is, you know, a little bit about those hurdles, you know about the bills, and what we're going to talk about now is how do you put those 2 things together and start to engage with your members of Congress in a way that makes sense at the right time. And with the right kind of spirit to it. So one of the things with this particular group of seminars that we've been doing is that we've been encouraging you, first and foremost, to visit your members of Congress in their home district, in your hometown, especially when they're back home. That is a fabulous time to make a visit. You can make a visit with them or with their staff. It's okay. Visiting with staff is not a wash. It's actually very important for relationship development. And this slide right here lets you know, how do you find your legislator? How do you find your senator? And again, all of this information will be sent to you after we're all done.
And all legislators have at least 3 offices. They all have an office in DC, and they all have at least 2 local offices where constituents can go and visit them. Now, in DC, when people come to visit folks in DC, if you only show up once a year, then your legislators and their offices kind of treat it like it's a photo op. But when you go and visit a legislator in their local office, now they're working. This isn't a photo op. This is real work.
Yeah.
So find your legislator's phone number. You will have these links, and it will give you all the office phone numbers. It will say, here's your legislator. Go to this page, and on the page will be all their contact information. So what I'm going to do next is, we've been working on this for several months. I am going to put up a little poll. Here it is, where actually let me, the poll has been launched. There we go. I'm going to put up a little poll, and you can answer. We're only asking you a couple of questions. have you made a congressional visit or set up a meeting yet? Would you like more practice? And if you have not made a visit or set up a meeting, let us know why you haven't. And for people that are nervous or couldn't gather a group, we would love to work with you. Yes, if you are slammed with the work that you're doing, then that may not be something you can do right now. If you don't know enough about the legislation, we can certainly work with you on all of that. All right, we've got 60% of the folks have answered this poll. Hopefully we can get to 80%. I'll leave it up for another 4 minutes. And then we would love to work with you on that. We've talked about setting up maybe office hours where,
Yeah,
yeah, where either I or Noel, we would be waiting in Zoom and you could just drop in. We could role play with you. We could answer questions about the bill, whatever it is that you wanted to know. A lot of times just saying what you want to say to someone else is like, oh, that really wasn't all that hard. You know, the world didn't end, the sky didn't come crashing down. I can actually do this.
Andrea, there's a question from Ron in the chat. He's saying, are you saying that only calls and visits are the only ways to get their attention, and emails or using the send us comments doesn't work? And the way I responded was no, but what we're trying to emphasize is when you do visit, you have this opportunity to build a relationship. And that means it's not just, oh, this is what I think. When you visit, there's more of a two-way back and forth. So you're always learning about what your lawmaker thinks. You can also dynamically adjust your arguments, right? Or come back with further information. And then as they get to know you, you'll have more ability to engage them more effectively, because you'll know more about them. You'll know what drives their decision making. You'll know their values. You'll know what really gets their back up against a wall, and figure out how to phrase it so you don't, trip over that again. And so you just get better and better, because it's the relationships that you build that ultimately become the important partner to the real content of that bill. And the more trust and understanding and relationship you build, the better. So absolutely keep those emails going. We do them. We just did a John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act on the yard side of John Lewis. The anniversary of Congressman John Lewis's passing yesterday. Yes, they matter. Absolutely, they matter. But it's good to have a lot of tools in your toolbox. So visiting is one of them. How'd we do on the poll, Andrea?
We are at 73%. We've got 38 of 52. We are doing really, really well. We are at 74% now. We are almost there. I used to visit Capitol Hill twice a month. It wasn't always on the same legislation. There were about 10 bills that I worked on, and we didn't always see the same people, but we would go. There would normally be 4, sometimes 10 of us in a group, and then we would take letters for 60, 140 was our record number of people in the house. And we would stop into the offices and literally just drop in. But since we had been doing this for 4 years, people sort of knew us. And every once in a while, I would be out in the outside of the office talking to a staffer, and a legislator would hear me, and they'd come to the door and they would be like, all right, what are you here about today? And I would respond, well, do you have 30 seconds? And they would be like, what? You have 30 seconds. And then I would make my pitch.
There you
And
go.
you know
Andrea's
what?
30-second pitch visits. They're legendary, man. Andrea, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second because we've got such a great question in the chat. And
Yes, yes.
here's the question. And thank you so much, Elite, for asking it. And I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. What if you are one of the 700,000 people who live in DC who don't have a representative who can vote? Plus, I
Yes.
already agree with almost everything the wonderful Representative Holmes Norton advocates for. So what do all our people in DC do?
Well, you're wonderful people in DC because you live where Congress is. You take a look at who is on that committee of jurisdiction, and even if they are not your representative, remember I said sometimes we would go to the Hill and there were never more than 10 of us, and we would go to 140 offices. Obviously, a lot of the people we were visiting were not our individual representatives. We would visit people on the committee of jurisdiction. We would visit people who previously had supported a bill like this. We would visit people who supported the concept of what this bill did. And we would talk to them, because sometimes a member of Congress just doesn't know that a bill is there until you tell them. So if a member of Congress is on a committee of jurisdiction, they are definitely fair game, even if they are not your member.
Yeah, I've also taken people from DC on visits to Senator Schumer, right? Because why would I do that? Anybody guess? Well, Senator Schumer, has jurisdiction. He's that decision maker. Is a bill gonna go to the floor? And so it's a way for advocates who are represented by Senator Schumer to bring their friend from DC along. And so this is better for a virtual meeting because not all of us can, get into DC from far away. But whenever you're in DC, remember your friends in DC and think about, can you bring them with you? Let's make it clear that these bills, all these voting rights bills, they work together. Right? They're not really, they're intended to be complementary to one another. Well, Andrea, I know we're going to have a lot more questions. We want to have time for our role play, and we've got a bit more information to share. Where are we on the polls?
Well, what I'm going to do is we've achieved our 75%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the poll right now. I know that some people go to these and they are multitasking. So thank you all who completed the survey. So I'm going to end the poll. And here are the results. So we've had 7 people who have already made visits. We have 18 people who would like more practice. I am very excited about that. Excellent. There are people who want to know more about legislation, need more practice. There's a couple of people that are nervous. Now, there's a few people where the local office is just too far away. And I know a lot of these offices, there is no public transportation that goes there. And there's one person that really wanted to get a group of people together. Well, you can go as yourself and maybe deliver petitions or gather signatures at a farmer's market of like other local people in your area, and then take that to the legislator. So yes, we would be thrilled to work with you. I'm going to drop my email in the chat, and then people can let me know if they would like to do office hours, and then we'll figure something out. All right, setting up the meeting, you need to generally make an official request via email, or there's generally a form on their website. You're going to want them to know what the topic of your meeting is, because legislators have multiple members of the staff, and different staff members handle different issues. And you're going to want to meet in the local office. Now, my person who has transportation problems, you might want to see if you can do a Zoom meeting. That could be possible. So again, go to the farmer's market, get signatures on a petition, take a petition that an organization that you're part of has created and offer to deliver the signatures, so you can let your representative know, I am not the only person out here who has an interest in voting rights. There are a lot of people I know, as a matter of fact, everybody that I know, and I know a lot of people, they are interested in voting rights. Yay, our legislative meeting simulation.
Hey, Andrea.
All right, all right.
Andrea, do
Oh,
you mind
John,
answering a
we're
quick
ready.
question right before we start?
All
It's
right.
it's someone asked, how can constituents determine when their member of Congress is back in their state and available for office visits?
Well, one of the things you can do is when you go to the House or the Senate website, they will tell you when the House is in recess, when the Senate is in recess. And they may not literally be at your office. Remember, they've got multiple local offices, but you will know they are at least not in DC.
One of my favorite resources from Roll Call, which is a publishing thing on Capitol Hill, is that they have a nice, really easy to read congressional calendar. And so I just dropped the 2024 congressional calendar into there. But it's really wonderful to call the office and say, hey, I'd really like to visit with my member of Congress. I mean, that's a really great first call. When will they be back? You know, I'm interested. And so don't ever worry, be free, feel good about asking. Remember, when you call them, they're going to want to take that call. They're going to want to hear from you, because they like to be able to say, I relate to my constituents. I'm in touch with my constituents. All right, so we're going to role play a little bit.
All right, hang on. I'm going to do one
sorry.
last question. When is the most effective time to contact your legislators? If there's a bill you care about and that bill has a committee hearing, that is a great time to contact them before the committee hearing or before there is a vote. That is a fabulous time to show major support. Otherwise, when it's a Congress like we have now, and there is not going to be a committee vote because the committee refuses to schedule one, you just want to go and make sure your member is aware that there are a lot of people in their district that support this legislation.
Yeah.
All right, I'm ready for role play.
All right. So one of the things we've been having fun with is, let's sort of role play a congressional visit. So I am going to be the constituent. In other words, I'm all of you. And Andrea is going to be a recalcitrant. Do you want to be a senator, or do you want to be a person in the House of Representatives?
Oh, I'll be a regular person. I'll be someone in the House of Representatives.
You'll be someone in the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Congresswoman, I'm going to be knocking on Andrea's door, and I'm going to have set up in a visit in advance. And I'm going to be expressing my strong opinion that the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act should be passed in order to ensure that every American can cast their ballot freely and fairly. And I'm going to be knocking on her door knowing that she does not support the bill. All right, here we go. Are you ready? We're going to just do a few minutes of this, then we'll talk about it. Knock, knock, knock. Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thank you, Sheila, for letting me in. And I'm just should wait here then until the Congresswoman comes in. Okay, great.
Is there somebody in my office to see me now? Did she have oh, this is my appointment. Okay, great.
Good evening, Congresswoman Miller. My name is Noelle D'Amico, and I'm with the Worker Circle, a Jewish social justice organization. And I'm here today because I made an appointment. You've probably heard of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. It's really the reauthorization of the long-supported bipartisan Voting Rights Act that Congressman John Lewis risked his life for. This act was originally passed in 1965, and it's up for reauthorization. And that's why I'm here today. I'd like to talk with you about that.
Well, I knew Congressman Lewis, and he was a very, very nice man. He actually mentored me when I was first elected to Congress. And every once in a while, we would talk about voting rights. And he knew how I felt about all this, making it easier for people to vote. Are we going to make it so easy that anybody and everybody can vote? I really believe in election security, and Congressman Lewis understood that. So that's probably why he stopped sending around that dear colleague letter to me asking me to sign on.
Well, one of the things that we can depend on is that our elections are free and they are secure. The last election was one of the securest in history. But what we are worried about is there are constituents that have difficulty surmounting barriers that have been placed before them. Unfortunately, many states, including this one, have passed legislation that makes it harder for people to vote. Particularly people of color have had more difficulty voting. And what the John Lewis Act would be able to do is make sure there was a federal review so that no matter where you are in the United States, you can rest assured that barriers will not be placed in your way, and that those new laws that are coming forward at the state level have been carefully screened and evaluated to not discriminate, and also to make sure that the election process runs smoothly for all Americans.
Well, number one, there is a reason why states run elections. States run elections because we have to pay for the elections. And so it is the state's responsibility to make sure within our budget constraints and knowing our people and the areas where we are holding elections, we have to be very, very vigilant and make sure that, as you say, the elections are fair, the elections are secure, and I am just not comfortable with federal government coming in and telling states that they can't do something that for them is very, very important.
It sounds to me like one of your concerns is an undue cost burden being passed on to states that are already encumbered. This bill would not further encumber states economically. This is not going to create added costs. In fact, it returns us to the good old days, frankly, to the time when we were able to have legislations with a time when people could vote easily, but also fairly, and could go to the polls and make their voices heard. What this bill does is ensure that it doesn't create further bureaucratic processes or hurdles or costs.
I will actually consider it, but again, I've spent days, weeks talking to Congressman Lewis, and we just do not agree that this makes sense in the 21st century. I get it in 1965. This is not 1965 anymore. We've moved on.
Of course, that
Okay,
was
and
yeah.
let's end here so we can
Okay,
get
that's
through the
good.
rest
And
of
so
the-
what I'll say is that thank you so much for your time, and I'll be sure to get back to you with some more details about costs or lack thereof, and also about what has actually changed since the Supreme Court decided to pass Shelby v. Holder. And so I would just be sure to follow up and to thank the Congresswoman for meeting with me and look forward to staying in touch. Thank you so much for your time. So we
Thank
did
you
a
for
super
visiting.
short one. This was super attenuated. I did not tell a personal story. I tried mostly in this. I had a feeling because she didn't know the meeting was coming, apparently, that I wanted to respond to where she was rather than push more than just some general information. So Andrea, what was on your mind as you were doing this?
Well, what I was thinking of is, again, I'm remembering all the people that I saw over a 10-year period who knew the member whose bill I was talking about, but for whatever reason, and sometimes it was a conflict with the member, they just really weren't that interested in signing on. And they maybe knew a little about the bill, but didn't have the depth. And so they would say things where, and you were trying to say, no, this belief that you have is not true. And in some instances, when people have made up their minds and dug in their heels that they're not going to support anything and they're not really open to reason, there may not really be much you can do with them.
That's
But
right.
again, you work on building a relationship where they begin to soften to you and they relax and they're able to listen.
Yeah. When I was listening for in this meeting, what was a value or an issue of concern that was important to the Congresswoman in this case? And
I'm a
it's
Republican. I'm concerned about money.
well, there you go. So what I would do in my thank you email that I would come home and write to the Congresswoman, I would thank her for meeting. I would address her concerns as much as I could. If I don't have an answer on the spot, I'm not going to give her an answer. Never make stuff up. Just say, I will be happy to provide you some more information on that. I would go back. I would provide a brief amount of information on that. I thank her again and encourage her to take a second look, always being appreciative for the time that someone spends with you. And then you just build your relationship from there. There are a lot of other slides that you're going to get in our slide deck when we send it that'll give you tips. assigning roles. If you bring a group of people, somebody leads the meeting, somebody tells a story, somebody takes the notes, everybody's got a responsibility. They're so easy to understand that when you get those slides, you'll know what's going on right away. Another thing that we're going to encourage you to do is speak out of your own values and experience. And this time, this was a little bit more wonky, actually, but if we had a little bit more time, we would have been able to demonstrate a story. It could be a story about me, or it could be a story about someone I know, or I could have drawn on my Jewish values, that when we see our fellow Americans being unable to easily cast their ballot in a democracy that's grounded in the consent of the governed, then as Jewish, part of Jewish tradition is to not stand idly by in the midst of that, but to really engage and try to change that. And so you'll get a lot more slides, but before we go, I wanted to say that the Center for Common Ground and the Workers' Circle collaborate all the time. And one of the places that we collaborate in building democracy is at the grassroots. And so we have a wonderful program coming called Build Power, Start a Democracy Circle. And that is coming on August the 1st. And here's the little link to sign up. Democracy circles are small groups of people that you gather together where you live. And it's an opportunity for you to learn about democracy, to learn about some of the issues like what is the filibuster, or what's in the FTVA, the Freedom to Vote Act, or how has gerrymandering impacted our ability to cast our vote and elect people that we really want to elect. So there's all different kinds of topics in this study, reflection materials. Don't worry, it's not like going back to school, and except in all the best ways. We give you resources and some fun questions, and then you bring the people and you bring your power, and maybe you get together and you postcard to North Carolina and Team Unity with the Center for Common Ground, or maybe you decide that you're going to gather your democracy circle together and you're going to make a visit to your member of Congress in your hometown. There's lots of ways to be involved, and we sure hope that as this is our last effective advocate for this 2024 year, don't worry, we'll start them up again, but that's the last one for this year, that you'll join us on August the 1st and learn more about how to start a democracy circle. Andrea, let me give you the last word here.
I'm excited. I was going to say in 2025, not only will we be working on voting rights, because a new Congress, 119th Congress, will be seated. And again, as I said before, elections have consequences. We are looking forward to a Congress that will work with us, the people, to rein in our rogue third branch of government, the Supreme Court. We will be looking in 2025. We've already got legislation this year, but based on the makeup of Congress, we're not really going to be able to move it forward. We will be looking at setting term limits for justices so that they are not on the court for a lifetime. We will be looking at expanding the court. These are all powers that Congress has. The president doesn't have these powers. Congress has them. We will also be looking at putting in rules on ethics, transparency, and recusal, that will be rules that members of the court must follow. So right now, as I said, or as Noel said, the court is rogue. They are interpolating, taking a look at a law, politicizing it to their right-wing beliefs, and saying, okay, here is our judgment. And you literally have to hang upside down and backwards to try to arrive at how did they get there from here? Well, they did. So
They
now
did. Yeah.
we, the people, are going to have to rein them in.
And to be fair, there are justices who say exactly that. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson reminded us of our responsibility as the people. She talked about in her dissent from the most recent decision, the people in their wisdom, right? We in our wisdom are going to be vigilant about what this decision means, by which she's encouraging us to remember our power. Justice Kagan, similarly. So we're not giving up. We're not turning back. We're going to keep moving on. We're going to move on together. We're going to collect our power. We're going to make our visits. We're going to make our voices heard. And I look forward to the result, which I believe will be a better and more beautiful America, a more multiracial democracy than we've seen before.
Yes, we will not be looking to the past for greatness because there wasn't that much. We are going to be creating the future greatness.
That's right. Okay, friends. Thank you so much. It's so fun to be with you again. I hope this has been valuable. Be in touch. Look for that follow-up email that'll be coming your way.
Take care,
Take
everybody.
care.
And